Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for your patience, in particular those people on live stream. My name's Andy Woodfield. It's a real pleasure to welcome you to this fantastic venue. Hopefully you've had a chance to have a good look around. Great to have you here. We've got some amazing speakers for you tonight. I have loved them all at different levels all through the day, and they're all now fabulous. So I'm convinced you're gonna absolutely love them too. We are live streaming, so be careful what you say. That's a message to myself. We have our fantastic sign language interpreters for those that can make use of that service. And we're live streaming for a reason. We're live streaming so that people that can't necessarily get into this venue can also participate in this event. So, thank you very much. I've got a little word from a chap who's the big boss, who'd like to say a few words before we carry on.
Good evening and a warm welcome to those who are attending in person, as well as those who are joining us virtually. I'm sorry I can't be with you, but I know you're going to have a lively evening. Each of the speakers tonight has a unique and inspiring story to share with you, with the purpose of influencing positive change. And I know you're all engaged with the discussion around how we can work together as a network. Each of you has helped us deliver on our purpose to build trust in society and solve important problems. We also know that you've gone on to achieve extraordinary things throughout your careers and personal journeys since your time with us. You are part of one of the most diverse and innovative networks in the UK and globally. A vibrant community of over 60,000, which extends across the public and private sectors, as well as across a wide range of industries. Together, you have a wealth of talent, knowledge, and opportunities, and it's a privilege to have you as part of our PwC family. It's also important to us that you feel that your fellow alumni are your network for life, and that you can draw real value from that. I really hope you enjoy this event this evening, as well as the opportunity to share your stories and ideas with others. And I'm really looking forward to hearing all about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Kevin might make an appearance later, we're not sure yet. We got 7 fantastic speakers for you, and a fantastic lady who is a friend of mine, and hopefully she'll still be a friend of mine by the end of the evening, the fabulous Donna Herdsman. I'd like to welcome Donna to the stage. Please give her a massive round of applause.
Thank you, Al. Give you a kiss. Just in case I'm...
Donna is our MC for this evening.
Thank you, Andy. I'm absolutely delighted to be entrusted to guide us through what is our inaugural PwC Alumni Live event. So don't forget that you're live, please, because you never know what people may pick up on video. So one of the things I have learnt from being at PwC was to be absolutely fearless. And it was especially key when I turned up in Mozambique to meet my client who wasn't there. And I managed to survive that event. So when Andy said, would I be the MC for this event, I thought, what could possibly go wrong? So here I am, and it's great to see all of us here today because it proves that there is life after PwC. I know that being part of the network has enabled me to remember the best of times, to stay connected, but whilst moving forward with my life. And it's been fantastic actually working with the team. In particular, we focused on making the event accessible to everyone. As Andy has said, we are streamlining for that purpose, not just because some people can't be here, but some people will find it difficult to access what is indeed a wonderful venue. And we're having our wonderful interpreters so people can follow us as we engage with our fantastic speakers. But in working with the team, it's reminded me of some of the values I learned at PwC, which have stayed with me today. The importance of connecting and asking for support, which I was taught was a strength and not a weakness. Leadership in action, not limited by grade or hierarchy. I think I can just remember those times. And collaborating to find the best solution to complex problems. Because if we knew how to fix them, there would be no space for consultants or auditors. So, I'd like to thank, and I think it's important to thank the people that's helped get us here. I know there'll be more formal thanks later, but in particular, Tali, Katie, Lucy, Tamara, without whom we wouldn't be in this venue today. And the agenda's going to run something like this. So we're going to have speeches till about 9:30. We're going to have a small interlude. Now, let me just be clear what the interlude means. It means you're going to be able to stand up, have a bit of a wiggle, listen to a video, and then sit down again. So I'm just managing your expectations. And the talks today are going to range from strategic in nature right through to things that are very personal to us as individuals, the ability to make a change both within ourselves and for the society that we live in. And there's going to be some calls to action. So I will be asking you to think about what you're going to do differently at the end of the night. If not tonight, then tomorrow. Also asking you to connect with people you probably haven't met before, because we've got people here that worked with the firm 30 years ago, right up to 3 years ago. So I'm sure there's people here that you've never met. So use it as an opportunity to build new relationships. Now, I like to set goals, and if we've all worked at PwC, we know that that's part of our DNA. So the goal tonight is to break Twitter. So I know not all of you tweet, I can tell by the looks on your faces. We have so hopefully you've picked up a card which enables you to get onto Wi-Fi, and we'd like you to be tweeting throughout the evening, because we want to trend as number one. I like to have objectives, it's really good for the soul, I find. And we know what gets done, what gets measured, gets done. So we've got people that will be monitoring how well you're all doing. Right, so for those that want to tweet, it's PwC UK Alumni and hashtag your network for life. So, because I like to make sure we're all interactive, we are going to do something, because it's the first one, and whoever comes next year is going to have to do better than all of us. So we're going to have something called the PwC UK Alumni Sway. So I'm going to demonstrate the sway, and then I want all of you to do it. And if you're not doing it, you're going to have to do it again. Right, so the sway goes like this. I want you to lift your arms up, and I want to sway to the right. You're right, and then sway to the left. Oh, fantastic. Right, so hopefully you all now feel energised, you're all focused. And with that in mind, I am going to start the formal part of the evening with a quote. So one of my inspirations is Nelson Mandela. I had the opportunity to actually work for his government shortly after the end of apartheid, and to help them change the culture and the future of South Africa. So it's not by chance that I pick him as my opening quote. And he stated, "Education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world." With that in mind, I'd therefore like to welcome our first speaker, Gyan Power, who's going to talk to us about emotions as a superpower.
My name's Gyan Power, and I'm a PwC alumnus. Leaving PwC in 2017, I've now founded two of my own businesses, both working in the corporate wellbeing sector. The core focus of my talk is about igniting emotion within us and other employees that we work with, how we can really embrace our own emotions to understand ourselves better, but then to understand the people that we're working with, so we together can be more inclusive emotional leaders. The problem that I'm trying to solve is that we live in a world of robotics, of automation, of tech, which, although fantastic, we're forgetting that we all have emotions and we all have a heart. I truly believe that everybody has a story that they'd like to share, if only we were willing to take the time and to listen. My name's Gyan Power, and after graduating from university, I joined PwC in their restructuring practice in 2014. Like many of you here today, I look relatively normal. Well, I look relatively normal. I joined the firm, and I had a fantastic time building relationships, working hard, and wanting to go the extra mile to develop a personal brand for myself that stayed with me, both at the firm and beyond. And I remember my final day at the firm, organising an event for 700 people, and I was in my element. But of my 36 months at the firm, only 9 of these are what I consider to be normal. Because the latter were slightly more challenging, slightly more difficult, but they shaped the person that I am today. The photo behind me is a photo from July 2014, a fantastic day with my mother, my father, and my sister. Setting out and about to embark upon my career in the big city, and thinking I knew it all. But what I didn't know was what was about to happen just 9 months after this photograph was taken. It was the 8th of May 2015, which you might recall is an important day in the United Kingdom because it was the day of the general election. But for me, that day was a little bit different, and one that will stay with me for years to come. Because the 8th of May 2015 was the day that my father was murdered. Now, for many of you in the room today, I hope that you can't relate to that, and God forbid that anybody will go through something similar. But what I can share is throughout the past few years, I've learned an awful lot about myself and about those around me. And I might have been young, just 23 at the time, in fact, but my word, I learned an awful lot about myself. 2014 was supposed to be the start of my career, and instead, it was filled with my family all over the media. Meeting after meeting, interview after interview. Police, the government, solicitors. It was endless. My sister and I fought tirelessly, endlessly, to find out what on earth had happened to my father. And time went on. And a lot was going on in my personal life, but I want to bring this back to my work life. PwC were unbelievably supportive, but after 3 months out and the investigation continuing to this day, I thought, well, how am I going to continue in my career back then? How, after a time out, what does my career look like? What's changed? So with all this going on in my personal life, my emotional compass and radar was on constant alert. PwC were very welcoming as I came back. People of all grades, very supportive. But notably 2 directors, Jason Higgs and Isabel Gross. These 2 individuals went out of their way to support me in some of the darkest moments of my life. 2 very different characters, one more introverted, one more extroverted, and one actually I'd only known for a few months. But the way they went out of their way to listen to me, to support me, was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. I specifically remember one moment taking a walk down the river near Moor London with Izzy. It was a busy afternoon with back-to-back meetings for her. But she took the time out and she said, let's go out of this office, we're going for a walk. Speaking to her and sharing how I felt that afternoon relieved me. It was like a pressure valve had just been absolutely released inside me. Just having a sounding board, somebody around me. And wouldn't it be great if more people did that? But why did it have to take a murder? Why did it have to take such an impact in my life for me to speak up? Or for others to maybe come along and say, you know, are you okay? How are things going generally? And it made me question and made me wonder that surely I can't be the only person that has problems in my personal life and comes to work. And I'm not going to ask people to put hands up, but I'm mildly confident that all of us in the room today have had problems in our work life or our personal life or stressful situations. And one really does affect the other. Now, going forward, it made me start thinking, why don't we share how we feel that much? Because admittedly, I'd been the same at times. Is it because we considered it a weakness? Is it because we thought maybe people would judge us? Or perhaps it was because the corporate world at the time is not creating the environment for us to want to speak out and share exactly how we feel and bring our true and full selves to work. It's exactly this that I believe that if we allow such an environment, people will thrive, perhaps increase productivity, increase attrition, and reduce absenteeism for better. And it made me look at the corporate world and think, you know, surely I couldn't have been the only one, you know, feeling this way. But people are working longer hours, and we're sleeping less, as if it's some badge of honor. We're constantly switched on, and we're constantly active and always connected, as if it's some sort of, you know, Superman or woman. But how about we just stop and see our emotions as a superpower instead? Now, with all of this talk about emotions, I want to bring it really back to how we measure this in the corporate world. Because as organizations, we really try to differ and differentiate ourselves on the market, be it against our competitors or otherwise. Yet internally, we're trying to all be the same and trying to conform instead of just being who we are at times. Now, I'm sure you've heard of employee engagement surveys and probably filled them in every year for our departments or organizations. Great things that measure a whole range of things within our organizations. But I didn't actually know what they really meant. Now, employee engagement is a word that's thrown around a lot, but it doesn't mean how happy staff are. And employee engagement also doesn't mean how satisfied our staff are. Employee engagement, according to Forbes, is the emotional commitment that individuals and employees feel towards a firm and its goals. The emotional commitment. Now, it's this emotion that I wanted to ignite across the city that we're sat in today and beyond. So in 2017, I took the leap and I left PwC to set up the Lions Club, known as TLC. TLC brings together 20 of the UK's most inspiring individuals. These are ordinary people like you and I sat here today, but with extraordinary stories to share, who speak powerfully but from the heart, to be the catalyst for change within our organizations. They're individuals who've paved history, changed the way for future generations. They include Dr. Kamal Hoti, Britain's first female Asian banker some 40 years ago, who's lived two very diverse lives with an Asian culture at home, yet being somebody else when coming to the office. And she's not the only one like that today. Matt Lindley, the RAF's first openly gay pilot, who joined the RAF when it was illegal for him to be homosexual. In fact, he would have been chucked out of there for being his full self if he'd opened up to who he really was. And finally, Pam Warren. Pam Warren, known as the Lady in the Mask. She survived the worst train crash in British history in 1999 in Paddington. Mentally and physically damaged, this lady fought her way for change in the United Kingdom and making the rail industry, as we know it, as one of the safest in Europe today. These people share their stories powerfully and from the heart and all their lifelong lessons so that we too can share and be more emotional together. But bringing this back to what we can all do, I suppose, and I've learned a lot of things over the years, I feel, is that when we go back to dealing with our teams or being this emotionally inclusive leader, as we want to call them, what can we actually do? And for me, it was the most simple thing. It's just when we go back to our offices or whoever we're sat around, just to sometimes just pop our heads up and look around. And I guarantee that sometimes you will just find somebody just looking out and staring into space for a fleeting moment. And just to pop over and just say to them, "Are you okay? Do you fancy a quick coffee or a walk?" Using these emotions that are within all of us here today as our superpower. Thank you.
So I'd like to thank Gianni for what I think was a really powerful talk. In particular, I want to challenge all of us to think about, are we authentic? And are we the change we really want to see? Because if we are not being true to ourselves, then how can we expect others to follow us and for them to be true to themselves? And sometimes that requires us to understand our own very passions. And with that in mind, I would like to ask Glenn Peters to take us through the energy of renewal.
My name's Glenn Peters. I'm CEO of Western Solar Limited. I was a former partner of PwC for 28 years. When I was with the firm, I think I was known to be a slightly crazy guy that came up with innovative ideas. Quite a lot of them were total nonsense, but some of them were quite good. I'd like to continue now to be known also as an innovator. So the focus of my talk is what motivates us? Why do we wake up in the morning? And I will be majoring on something that really, really is quite significant and is actually changing an industry. And there can't be anything more motivating than that. Hello. I recognize a few people here in the audience, which is always good. It's a very important day for me today because 8 years to today, I retired from this firm. I walked out of that door at Embankment Place. And you can almost predict when you're going to be 60, almost. I could see the day coming along, and I thought I prepared for it. I set up an arts charity. I even built, very arrogantly, an opera house to run these fantastic programs when I was going to be retired. I thought I'd reignite my writing career, and I thought I'd go back and sort of do a bit of sailing. But the day I walked out that door, I don't know if you remember John Major, the guy who used to be the security guy, and he said, Glenn, it's a pity you're going because I'm really going to miss somebody to take the mickey out of. And he'd do that, he'd say, banker's house today, Glenn, or, he'd say, part-time. And it's actually, as I walked out that door and went home, suddenly I realized that this Pavlovian conditioning that we had from some 28 years with the firm, the stretch targets, the KPIs, filling the pipeline for a global client, and all those sort of things weren't going to be there. And I thought, what am I going to do? I don't need wealth creation. I mean, I've got the opera house, and and there's a limit to the amount of bottles of champagne that you can drink, or the number of times you go to Glyndebourne. So I really felt a vacuum, a real vacuum. And I went away with my wife to a place called Holt over in Norfolk, and we sat together talking about this. And it was on Monday morning over the scrambled eggs that I saw this article. It was from the newspapers of the Sunday. And the article was about energy poverty in housing, where people in social housing, up to 40% of people in social housing were having to make the choice between food on the table and heating their homes. Little kids having to live in environments of under 12 degrees centigrade, asthma, and mortality in the elderly, mortality and a penalty on the NHS of several billion. And I said, I'm sure I can do something about this. For God's sake, I've worked for the greatest professional services firm in the world for 28 years. I can do something about it. I think I know something about it. And I'd instantly there, on that Monday morning, I'd solve this problem about how to solve how to satiate my Pavlovian addiction. And so I did what we were all taught in the firm, 101 of bringing change, is surround yourself by people who think like you in terms of the passion for what you want to do. Also make sure that they're also diverse. They come at the problem from a number of different directions. And I was really lucky. I had two people in Wales, where I now live, a young architect who said, Glenn, I want to come and work for you. I want to change the world. He said, I'm fed up of building small little brick boxes. And there was another guy who was a carpenter. He said, I think I can build a house for £10,000, a fantastic house. And so I said, well, let's get together and let's research the world for what they're doing. And so we spent 6 months, maybe 9 months, looking at best practice around the world, mainly in Northern Europe, in Canada, as to what people were doing. And we then decided to put together, as indeed any change project you do, you'd build a prototype. You'd build a pilot. And we built this prototype. Sorry, that's one of the team. And so we built this prototype. And we had a launch party. We invited the heads of sheds, council chief executives, housing association chairs, and said, come and have a look at this. And they said, fantastic. They said, we love this house, 12% of the energy of a traditional house. We love the well-being, a sense of wellness it creates. We love how good it looks and the way it uses timber and it's being so low carbon and using solar, etc. And we were so excited that we got the team together after they left, and we gave each other high fives, and we said, fantastic, guys. Now let's sit back and wait for the orders to pop in. Have you heard that one before? A week passed, nothing happened. Second week passed, nothing happened. Third week, I said, I better make some calls. So I called some of these heads of sheds and said, you know, we haven't heard from you. What's the problem? And they said, you know, we've talked it over with our executive team and with some of our board members, and they actually think this is actually too innovative. It's too new. The banks won't like it. The insurers won't like it. We won't be able to get it past our management and our boards. And we went from this huge level of excitement to deflation. And again, could I ask you, where haven't you seen that before? And here is where this sense of purpose came back in. Because when I got the team together and I said, what are we going to do? And one of them said, well, actually, you know, nothing's really changed. We're still enthusiastic about this idea. The idea is still a good one. We know it's good because it works elsewhere. It works elsewhere in Germany, in Austria, in Canada. It's got to work here. Let's carry on. And that was, again, part of this energizing. And so I refinanced the company, and we built a village, a solar village, to demonstrate the idea. And this time, when we had our opening, and we got real people in, real people, real tenants who started to speak fantastically about it. The government minister for housing came along, and the press came along. And they spoke widely about it. There were full pages of descriptions of the Guardian, in the Eye, and then we started to get calls. And I'd like to say that the rest is history, but it's not, because we're still on the campaign. We've now got 2 villages being built, another 2, and next year's pipeline is fantastic. It looks about 50 to 60 houses are being commissioned by people who provide housing. And the final part of my talk is actually going in and meeting some of the people who live in these houses and seeing their smiling faces. And doesn't that energize renewal? Doesn't that actually energize the sense of purpose? And so I ask you, when you're taking on something challenging, something renewing, is that be clear about where that passion is, what those objectives are, and why you're getting up in the morning to do it. And I think you'll find that'll take you right up into the sky. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. And I like to think that everybody here is a success, because we are, aren't we? We're all very successful. But I ask us, when we go away, to think about how we go out of our way to help those that are less fortunate than ourselves, because we have the power to change somebody's life. So I'd like to then turn us to the issue of artificial intelligence, because I've just talked about how we have the power. But if you listen to the press, there's a dirty thing called AI coming to take over our lives. I believe, and I'm sure a lot of you in this room believe, that actually it's within our gift to determine how artificial intelligence helps us or not. And therefore, I'm really pleased to introduce Pete Wilson, who's going to engage us on the topic of artificial intelligence, automation, and the age of personalisation.
I'm Pete Wilson. My first career was with the Royal Air Force, jumping out of perfectly serviceable aeroplanes and fighting the Cold War in Germany. After 10 years, I decided to re-educate myself and did a degree in computer science and an MBA. I joined PwC in 2000, and I'm now working independently as a management consultant. So I have a very early educational experience that drives my worldview about change, personal change, team change and organisational change. I spent 20 years in public sector organisations and private sector organisations driving technology-driven change. The question on everybody's lips now around AI and automation is what will happen? But AI and automation technology is not something that's been beamed down from Mars that we don't know anything about. We are building it. So the question should be, what should happen? What should happen with the technology in our institutions to treat us more like individuals for the betterment of everybody? My personal motto is, through endeavour to the higher stars. Who that guy was. So yes, I've a very early educational experience that informed the way I view personal change, and I'm going to tell you what that is. This is a bit of an indicator as to when I took the 11 plus, okay, it's in black and white. I'm very young looking, obviously, but I'm really not. I took the 11 plus in 1972. And I was very excited to take the 11 plus because when I looked at the grammar school kids, they all looked really cool. They had great uniforms and they looked like they had their lives and their paths made for them. The kids that went to the secondary school, their lives were equally pathed out for them, but slightly different. They were to follow their mums and dads into industry, but on the shop floor. I wanted something a little bit different. So I was very excited to take the 11 plus. When I took the 11 plus and the letter came back, I was really pleased to learn that I had passed. So off my mum and dad went to the uniform shop. We bought the uniform. It was lovely, nice uniform, nice tie. Went to the grammar school. And on day one, I was sat down with a young lad next to me. And we introduced ourselves and we were given books and we had to write our names on the books. Now I noticed straight away something a bit weird. He'd copied my name. I looked over and he'd written Pete Wilson or Peter Wilson, as I am more formally known to my mother. And I thought that was really weird. I said, why have you written my name? He says, my name's Pete Wilson. Now, I know it's quite a common name and I bet there's at least one Pete Wilson in the audience, right? There you go. I cheated, right, because I know I'd looked at the list. But I wasn't surprised to see you there. It turned out, as the teacher quickly informed us, that this being 1972, they got a bit confused between the two sets of results. So one of us had passed and the other one had failed. Okay? So the only way that they could differentiate between the two of us was to wait for a couple of months, hopefully not longer than that, set us some tests, see how we got on, etc., and then break the news. Well, there you go. So I was the Pete Wilson that had failed the 11 plus, had to hand my uniform back. I'm not sure whether my mum and dad got the money back, and I went then to the secondary school. So 8 years later, I decided that they were wrong, and I had actually passed the 11 plus, or at least in my head, and I went and did a couple of degrees, an MBA, worked in computer science, and then joined PwC. There's a couple of lessons that I learned there. One is nothing is set in stone, both as an individual, as an organisation, or as teams. Nothing is set in concrete. We can change. The other thing I learned was that institutions don't really can't, are not equipped to deal with individuals. They look at us as big groups. A couple of numbers that I'll share with you. 66.5 million people, that's the population of the UK. I think we all recognise that number. 66 is the number of groups that the Experian Mosaic marketing tool breaks up the population. So 1 million people in a group, that's still huge. It's been quite successful. Here's another number, 0. In my experience, the number, the way that public sector organisations and institutions think about the population. it's one big group. There are some obvious exceptions, and there's some really exciting work going on in the NHS at the moment, and there's been some really exciting work going on in policing to break down the population. Now, I'm an evangelist for AI and automation. I actually think this kind of technology and the age of personalization is the next step on our evolution. It's going to make us much better human beings because it's going to take that weight or that part of our brain of the drudgery of life that we do day to day, and we're going to be able to free up part of our brain to think about other things. And for me, it's about being better humans. We've evolved in such a way and adapted that we are absolutely have a stepping stone to take the next step forward. We're all a bit worried at the moment about AI and automation and actually what it means. There are two kinds, or very quickly, there's a broad description of AI and automation. There's a general AI, and that's the kind of AI that you might have seen recently on the re-emergence of the 2001 Space Odyssey film, right, HAL, which exceeds our human ability in every facet, as opposed to narrow AI. This is exactly where we are at the moment, narrow AI. Technology that does one thing, and it does it very well, and it does it better than us. Great example of narrow AI is Google's AlphaGo technology, which is based up in King's Cross, that just beat the 9th Dan, the world champion at the game of Go. The interesting thing about the game of Go is that there are more moves in the game of Go than there are atoms in the observable universe. This algorithm, taught itself how to play. Now apply that to our life. There are a couple of contrasts I want to draw. I think there's a huge gap growing between commercially driven organizations and what it's doing with technology and our public sector services. So two contrasts I'd like to draw. One is, imagine a world where your kitchen food and your fridge never runs out of your favorite food. And why is that? Because your supplier is monitoring a number of things. It can monitor your waste, all of your waste. It's monitoring heart rate, it's monitoring weight, it's monitoring the movement of the shelves and in the fridge. And you've authorized your supplier to keep the thing stocked. Contrast that with living with cancer undiagnosed for 6 months and then waiting 2 months for treatment. Think about that gap. That's going to happen. Another contrast. Think about your automated or autonomous travel pod waiting for you outside of your house to take you to work, choosing the most optimal route, the most environmentally friendly route, the route that takes you past the traffic and gets you to work for the meeting bang on time. Versus the alternative world of waiting at London Bridge for 2 hours for a train that has been endlessly delayed with hundreds of other people on the platform. So I'm actually evangelical about this. I think we can be better humans. There's a big question out there, which is what will happen with AI? But as I say in the video, it's not something that has been beamed down to us. We know about it. We're building it. We're influencing it. So the question should be, what will happen? One of the things I do in my spare time is that I'm a shaper, sounds quite grand, I'm a shaper for the World Economic Forum's 4th Industrial Revolution Challenge. Essentially what we're doing is going out and organizing seminars, getting people talking about technology and shaping our future world. Very interesting stuff. What I would like you guys to do when you go from here is to be part of that, to think about the ethics of AI and the technology that is emerging, but also not how it's being built in the organization, maybe the private organizations that you belong to, but also what's happening in our public services. What kind of public services do we want in the future? So please be part of that discussion and use your influence in your organisations to drive the conversation. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Pete. I don't know how many of you have elderly parents, in-laws, relatives. Hands? Hands? I do. So my mother has a mobile. I love my mother to death. She has a mobile. She can hardly ever find it. And even when she does, she never remembers to switch it on. And when she does that, she can't access any messages. So I think we have a collective opportunity to shape AI and help not just us, but to help the loved ones who think that the technology revolution doesn't apply to them, to help them stay connected to the world, because it's moving on. And I don't know about you, but I'd like my parents to enjoy the world as much as I do. So that's my call to action. And if you haven't got elderly relatives, then I'm sure you can find someone who you can help. Right, so we are now moving on. And, we talked about staying connected, and we've touched on lots of personal things. And I think the next speaker, Marilise de Villiers, is actually going to challenge us all when she talks about her case for completing the human firewall.
I am Marilise de Villiers, and I run my own high-performance coaching and training business. The core focus of my talk is about overcoming fear, anxiety, and limiting self-beliefs. I personally experienced adversity and I overcame it. And I remember the anxiety I felt at the time was crippling. We all have to take personal responsibility and become better leaders. Leadership has to be at all levels. We all have the potential to be a leader. Right, so I'm going to have to ask you all to help me out here for a moment because I'm feeling pretty anxious now. So can I ask everybody to stand up, please? And I just would like you to do 3 deep breaths with me, please. That was 1. Two. Right, so hopefully I can get through this. So my late grandfather was my hero. I was absolutely fascinated by him. And he was always telling me stories about solving complex maths problems with his engineering students. Back in the day, back in the 1950s, when he was a professor at the University of Stellenbosch. This picture was taken about 11 years ago, and he was 90 years old at the time, and we sadly lost him about 18 months later. So I look at the guys I work with every day now, who are solving these complex problems with computers, and I cannot help but to think that my grandfather would have been one of them, and that he would have loved it. Now, some of you may have experience, but what these guys can do with computers is absolutely mind-blowing. And to be frank, sometimes it scares me. They work their socks off 24/7 to keep the bad guys out, the hackers, as we call them. And what I admire the most about them is their persistence, their curiosity, and their ingenuity in doing so. To me, they are the unsung heroes. 7 years ago, a whole new world opened for me when a conversation with a colleague sparked my interest in the human aspects of cybersecurity. That colleague, William Beer, said, "Marilise, we need someone like you with your people and change skills to work with us, the security experts, to solve what is ultimately a people problem." So William was the catalyst for me starting. And even though at the time I had no idea what cybersecurity was, I was super excited. So over the last 7 years, I've worked with many cybersecurity professionals to develop innovative people solutions. And this experience has taught me that the more diverse the skills, the more diverse the roles, that they can actually be put together, the more complementary and coordinated and valuable that collaboration. So I passionately believe that people are the solution, that we have to strengthen the human firewall in order for society to become secure, that organizations and society can only be secure if we strengthen the human firewall and make people our strongest defense. The technology can only get us so far. But what is going to be critically important is that we include people from all walks of life. And William agrees. With an industry facing a shortage of up to 2 million security experts, it is critical that we involve not just more security experts, but also people from completely different backgrounds and cultures who will challenge the status quo and bring a fresh perspective to an industry that needs truly bigger, broader, and better thinking. Unfortunately, we have work to do to strengthen and complete the human firewall. A 2017 Global Information Security Workforce Study by Frost & Sullivan shows that women are globally underrepresented in the cybersecurity profession at only 11%. But what's worrying me more is that more women are actually leaving the profession than entering it. Now, this is such a complex problem, and not one I'll pretend we can solve here tonight. But what I would like to do is touch on a couple of themes that are close to my heart. The failure to attract women in the first place, and the failure to retain them. So failure to attract. Let's face it, we have an image problem. We are perceived as an industry for geeks. And what's more, is we are looking for ready-made experts only. I was told, Marilise, you're not technical, and therefore will never be taken seriously. Groovy. Usually when someone tells me that I cannot do something, I make it my business to prove them wrong. So really, we have to think about the language that we use. We have to think about including people from all walks of life to find those innovative solutions, open our minds to those possibilities. The other reason why we are not seeing women coming into the industry is because women are less likely to take risks. We don't like to take those risks. So an HP report found that men will apply for a role if they meet only 60% of the qualifications. But women will only apply if they meet 100% of the qualifications. That is 100%. So why are women leaving? Let me ask you, have you ever been too scared to raise your hand and ask a question? Felt ignored or sidelined? Had your ideas stolen? Been overlooked for a promotion? Felt belittled by a colleague? So here's my view. Women leave because we are alienated by the work environment, not because we've lost interest in the work. We feel unwelcome, we feel undervalued, we feel like we don't belong. Guys, let's just for a moment imagine ourselves being the only man in the boardroom with 9 other women. How might you feel? It always serves me well if I put myself in the other person's shoes and I try to see the world from their eyes. So, what can we do? Parents, this starts at home and it starts in our schools. We have to teach our boys and girls to believe that they can be anything that they want to be. Open our minds to the possibilities. And if you are secretly sat there thinking, but I don't want my daughter to be a scientist or a mathematician or an engineer, I ask that you open your mind to the possibilities. Imagine the world problems we can solve. Women. I want all women, young and old, to become warrior princesses, to stand bold, to stand tall, to be brave, and to challenge unacceptable behavior. Picture a lioness. No one is going to mess with the lioness. I want women to become this incredible force of nature. And men, guys, you hold the keys that can open doors for women in the cybersecurity industry. And by unlocking those doors and by breaking down barriers, you will not only progress your business, progress your code, be more effective, you will also become great inspirational leaders. We need men and women, and together we are stronger. Here is a favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes, from a phenomenal woman, Maya Angelou. In life, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. I want all of you to feel inspired this evening. Let's become great inspirational leaders. Join me in completing the human firewall.
Thank you, Marilise. And for those of you that know me, you'll know that that talk was particularly dear to my heart, mainly because I'm a woman, in case you hadn't guessed, and I'm black, in case you hadn't guessed. And I say those things because actually I've been told, somebody actually said to me, oh, I didn't know you were black, even though that they were looking at me. But in the world that we are today, it's okay to acknowledge who you see in front of you. And I'm very proud of being a black woman, but I'm even more proud to be working with people here today who recognise that it's diversity and inclusion that's going to change the world, and we want everybody to be themselves. So thank you, Marilise. And we're going to have the short interlude, which is not a break. It's going to be a video from our sponsors, and then we're going to do the sway to get us energised for the last part of the formal event. So, I want to thank you all for staying engaged, because I've been watching all of you, making sure you're all alert and engaged. And I'm sure you probably do with a bit of a wiggle, because I know I can. So if you feel like standing up, do. If you don't want to stand up, that's okay. And we're going to do another sway. Arms up, and we're going to sway to the right. You're right. And then sway to the left. And I think we'll do it one more time. Sway to the right. and sway to the left. Thank you. Right, so you'll be glad to hear that we've got 3 fantastic speakers to go before you're all allowed to go and enjoy additional fruits of your labour, which is the fantastic drinks and canapes that the team have laid on. And without further ado, we're going to turn to that forever difficult issue of transport. For somebody that lives in London, which I do, it always seems to be a nightmare. It doesn't matter what time of the day I'm travelling, it always seems to be a problem. And no doubt most of you have seen what's been dominating the press today. Where are we going to have the 3rd runway? It seems to be a conversation that is never ending because nobody wants to make a decision. So it's really quite topical and on message, I think, that we have Neil McClure with us, who's going to share with us some of his insights as we all get on board.
I'm Neil McClure. I'm an independent consultant with the Open Data Institute in Leeds. Previously, I was a consultant at PwC for 7 years, and I left PwC in October 2016. I'm going to talk about urban mobility and how we can get people around our cities and towns in more efficient ways. It's a widespread problem. It's something that a lot of people, if not everyone, experiences. Everyone has used public transport, has moved across and between our cities. So it's something that affects millions of people in this country on a day-to-day basis. Throughout my career to date, I've always been interested and excited about how customers or consumers use technology to improve their lives. In addition to that, I've got a lot of experience as a passenger of public transport services. So today, I'm going to be talking about how I can bring both of those together and hopefully some solutions to some of those big problems. I'm not embarrassed to admit that I love data. In fact, specifically, I love transport data. Shout out. The more we travel, the more data and information we demand, and the more we create. Yet, getting around our towns and cities is getting harder. In the UK, average times to travel across our cities have increased by 20% over the last 10 years. Our transport systems are already buckling under huge pressure. And with growing populations, those challenges and problems are only going to get bigger. What if I told you that by 2050, 70% of our global population will live in cities? That's about a 20% increase from where we are today. Think about what that might mean for you. Your daily commute, 20% longer, 20% busier. Getting around the city for that meeting or to see some friends. What about air quality, pollution, smog? Pressure on our green spaces? What about the impact on your physical and mental well-being? The more time we spend traveling means we have less time for work, rest, and play. We have to do better with how we design our transport systems and services. We can use technology and data to help, but to do so, we have to work better in 3 ways. Firstly, organizations need to open up their data. Open data is a technology concept that involves businesses making widely available to third parties information about their business and how it works. Data that is generally non-personal, non-commercially sensitive, and heavily aggregated. Providing this data to third parties enables them to access it and innovate with it, to develop propositions and solutions for customers. It also provides extra transparency for stakeholders. In transport, London is the best global example we have of an open data strategy in action. TfL makes openly available a huge range of data sets to third parties about their services. You can get schedules, timetables, fares, stop and station locations, even live real-time arrivals, just by signing up. TfL acknowledged early in their digital journey that they're a public sector transport authority. They're not a technology company. They're not an app developer. So they made their data openly available, and so Citymapper was born. The second way is we need more collaboration, less competition. Open data strategies work best when solutions are developed in collaboration with partners. Most of us would probably agree that our society is better if we have more people cycling. Lower pollution, lower congestion, healthier people, etc., etc. Let's take dockless bikes, a clever initiative that merges the humble bicycle with the smartphone in our pockets. By doing so, we create new, never-before-seen data sets. These dockless bike companies make lots of their data sets widely available and share those with partners. Companies like taxi and rideshare companies, local transport authorities, and many others. These dockless bike companies recognize the value in the data they have. Typical routes around our cities, common cycle paths, even the links between where cyclists end and start their journeys and move into another mode of transport. We need more collaboration like this. These dockless bike companies share this data, particularly with city planners, who use that data to inform investment decisions about infrastructure, like more bike lanes or bus lanes, or extra cycle parking. Extra collaboration, just like this, will help us be more innovative. That's collaboration between the government and the private sector, between corporates and startups, between data owners and data users, and even between competing transport operators. The third way is we need to build what customers want. As our lives get busier and our populations continue to grow and we become ever more connected, our expectations continue to rise. For us, transport is a necessity. It's not a luxury item. It has to work for us, and it has to fit around our lives. Providing transport services to us continues to get increasingly hard for those who provide it. Now, I want you all to imagine a future world where none of us owns or leases or drives our own cars. Instead, we pay a third-party provider a single fee for all of our travel, public and private. One single monthly flat rate fee for all of our tube, train, tram, bus, bike, taxis, ride-sharing, car hire, car clubs, autonomous pods, whatever it is. This concept is called mobility as a service. And whilst it's been around in a number of other countries for a number of years, we haven't seen it on the UK until very recently. In Birmingham, it's now possible to buy this Netflix-style subscription for travel, covering all of a customer's travel needs, public and private. So, data and technology can help us solve some of transport's biggest problems. And in doing so, it can help us solve some of our society's biggest problems too. Transport tech isn't just about new whizzy apps and platforms. So transport data can help reduce congestion, reduce pollution, improve sustainability, improve our physical and mental well-being, aid social inclusion, and help to improve our economy. So if it can do all of that, how can you not love transport data? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. And I'm sure next time we're sitting stuck on a train, in fact, waiting for a train that's yet to arrive, we'll hope that other people love data as much as you two do, and that they'll use it to improve the current services we have available to us. So we've talked, I think, a lot about the issue of change. And it's not by design that happened, because the speakers chose the topics themselves. So we're now going to move on, in fact, to what I think is one of my major skills, because I love to talk. But all joking aside, I think we also have the ability to think about how we can make a lasting change. And with that in mind, I'd like to invite Emma Richardson to take us through her thoughts on how one achieves a lasting change.
I'm Emma Richardson. I have 25 years' experience of working in human resources, initially working in the hospitality industry and then in venture capital and TV. I joined PwC in 2000 and I finally left in 2015, joining Lewis Silkin, a law firm, in 2016. I want to be known for being an approachable HR professional where people can come to me to discuss particularly sensitive issues, and we work collaboratively to solve that problem together. I'm going to talk about creating a better working environment for women. The media spotlight on this particular issue has empowered me to have the confidence to be able to speak up. I'm an aunt to 6 nieces who are not yet working. I want to make sure that when they start their first Saturday job, they enter a better working environment.
Good evening. In the very early parts of my career, I frequently had to meet with a general manager, and he had the habit of speaking to me here rather than here. As you can imagine, that made me feel very uncomfortable. And when I checked in with some of my female colleagues, it emerged that I was not the only person to be experiencing this particular problem. So what was I to do? I worked in HR. I had a personal responsibility to do something about this. So I went home, I had a good long think about it, and I practiced what I was going to say to give me the confidence to be able to say it. So the next time I met with that general manager, sure enough, his eyes lowered. And I looked down at myself and went, oh my goodness, what have I spilt something down myself? Brushing away some non-existent crumbs. Cue that general manager looking around at anywhere other than at me. I then thought, great, I have now achieved what I wanted to achieve. I no longer had a problem. But what about my colleagues who shared their stories as well? So I went to find my female colleagues and I explained what I had done. And I then took that particular situation, shared it with them, and I know for a fact that that general manager heard that refrain of, oh, have I spilt something down myself, at least 3 or 4 times in the next fortnight. Rest assured, that behaviour stopped. But I had no desire to get that individual into trouble. I have no desire to make a big drama out of this. I just wanted the behaviour to stop. And as I said in my video, I have 6 nieces, none of whom are yet working, and I want to make sure that they are encouraged and have the confidence to be able to speak up when they need to. But it's not about being a victim. It is about having the confidence to be able to speak up. Indeed, most of the situations we find ourselves in are because there is a power imbalance between somebody who is able to speak up and who takes advantage of that, and a more junior person who feels less able to. It's also about banter. One person's joke is another person's bullying, is another person's nightmare day in, day out. Indeed, I often say that I am not a barometer of what all women will find funny. I laugh at a lot of inappropriate things, but I have to check who my audience is. So
how have we found ourselves in this situation? The BBC commissioned a survey in 2017, and that survey of 6,000 people found that 40% of women and 20% of men had experienced either sexual harassment or bullying in the workplace or their place of study. If you included people who temp or are freelancers, then that number rises again. But it's not all bad news. Let's go back to what it was like in 1977. 21 million people used to regularly tune in to watch Benny Hill. You wouldn't find Benny Hill on the television nowadays. And indeed, in 1994, we were introduced to the Diet Coke ad, where we had very charming, very attractive-looking males and females encouraging us to drink fizzy pop. By 2014, those have sadly drifted away, and we no longer have those images to sell Coca-Cola. But why the here and why the now? In 2018, we find ourselves with cases such as Weinstein. We have the Me Too campaigning. It's the 100 years that women have got the vote. It's 50 years since the Dagenham Ford women went out on strike. So now is the time for us to speak up. But I don't want to alienate anybody in the room. The majority of people behave well. The majority of men behave well. So how do we go about this without alienating any particular group of people? If you're struggling to imagine what it might feel like, imagine yourself as the coach of a US-American football team, and they have just played appallingly badly. And you have to go in and tell them that they have performed poorly. You are physically weaker, definitely smaller. How are you going to be able to have the courage to be able to speak to them? I would wager that you would take a very deep breath before you said anything. I suspect you might say nothing at all, because we're all tribal and we want to fit in. So I would like to create a pandemic of speaking up, where everyone has the confidence to be able to say what they need to say, either in the moment or shortly thereafter. But speaking up, you must. My legacy, our legacy, is to ensure that my nieces, and I will name them, Ellie, Izzy, Charlie, Abby, Mia, and Amy, all have the personal confidence to be able to speak up. But they can only achieve that if we, right now, create the right culture that enables them to do that. So our call to action is to speak up now, so that in a few years' time, when my nieces join the workforce, they too will have the confidence to speak up, but I very much hope that their daughters never have to. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. And we all know, because we've seen it in the press, that mental health and challenges around the ability to share what we're all feeling actually start with being minimised if we can all speak up, because sharing enables us to find other ways of dealing with the challenges we have in life. So I'd like to thank Emma for touching on what is a very sensitive topic. Now, I hope you're all going to be sharing later on as you all network. But I think it's true that if you're going to be authentic and you're going to be open, you have to be prepared to share. Otherwise, nobody will ever see the real you. And having touched on that, you're probably wondering, where do we start? Because there's been lots of very valid topics today. In fact, there's some things I think I should have been doing yesterday. But we have, as our final speaker, Farah Giovanni, who's going to take us through what I found very powerful after listening to her share with me her thoughts the power of the pause.
My name is Farah Gavani and my company is Gavani Coaching, and I'm an executive coach and mindfulness teacher. The core of my talk is around the power of a pause and how by pausing it helps us make better decisions. It helps us solve those important problems. So in May 2013, I was meditating in the morning like I always did before going into the office. And it hit me. My purpose is to bring mindfulness into organisations. And this is now what I do. I bring mindfulness, coaching and leadership training into organisations. And I also have the great honour of working with other populations, whether that's general public or with my local cancer help centre, introducing everyone to these potentially life-changing practices. I want to be known for changing the way you work and changing the way you lead. And I want to be known for changing the way you live. In December 2005, I left my husband. I unemigrated from Australia and I moved back in with my parents on Christmas Day. I was miserable. I was stressed. I was in an abyss of depression. And one sleepless night, lying in my old teenage bedroom, I remembered a colleague in Australia had given me a book, and I'd read the entire book on the long flight home. And something compelled me that sleepless night to dig it out, and I started flicking through it. And I came across chapter 29, which advised me to set aside quiet time every single day. And this is how I stumbled upon mindfulness. Now, bear with me if you're thinking this isn't your cup of tea. See if you can stay with me, because not only did it help me cope with the range of emotions that accompany a failed marriage, having a mindfulness practice was also having an impact on how I was at work. And at this point, I was working for an investment bank. And it was one of those organisations, and this may be familiar to you, where we were expected to be online pretty much 24/7, had an overflowing inbox, back-to-back meetings. I had too much to do and not enough time to do it. And what I found was that my mindfulness practice was teaching me how to create space amidst the tyranny of busyness. This mindful space was allowing me to access clarity, creativity, and courage. Clarity arose because I was learning how to not take my thoughts quite so seriously. The mental chatter was still happening, the stressing, the worrying, the planning, a bit more stressing, and so on. Mindfulness isn't about making our minds go blank, but I was learning how to disengage from it and take a step back. And that stepping back meant I had greater capacity for thinking clearly. That clarity of thought allowed me to take another step back and gain a broader range of perspectives, which led to me thinking more creatively, which meant I was having better ideas and making better decisions. And because these better ideas and better decisions were coming from a space of mindful awareness, which is inherently infused with wisdom, this gave me the courage to see through on these ideas and decisions. It gave me the courage to have difficult conversations. And it gave me the courage to do what was right, not just what was easy. So this is what I found when I started to develop a mindfulness practice. And this has been shown again and again in the research, and I'll offer you two snippets. And the first comes from the US Marines. And I think that's a great image of the Marines sitting around in a circle meditating. And what they found was that Marines who meditated for at least 12 minutes a day improved their working memory capacity, which, amongst other things, gives us the ability to filter through an array of information that we're storing in our short-term memory and hone in on what's important. Research here in the UK showed that leaders who practiced mindfulness meditation for 10 minutes a day reported that they were working more effectively, that they were building better relationships at work, that they felt more resilient, and they were happier from 10 minutes of mindfulness practice a day. So what is mindfulness? It's not about making the mind go blank. It's not about switching off. And it's not even about trying to relax. Mindfulness is the awareness that arises when we purposefully pay attention to the present moment without harsh judgment. So it's about pausing and tuning in and seeing this moment in all its glory, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You may not like what's going on in this moment, but you may as well acknowledge it because it's already here. This moment is like this. So by pausing and purposefully paying attention to the present moment without harsh judgment means that we can access clarity, creativity, and courage to handle whatever challenges we are experiencing in this moment, which means we're then in a better shape to shape the next moment. So here we are today. I'm now a coach and mindfulness teacher, and I'd like to introduce you to a short mindfulness exercise. And if you're game and willing, and if it feels okay for you, I invite you to give it a go as I describe this to you. So this exercise is called Notice 5 Things. If you like to be highly accurate, you can call it Notice 15 Things. That's fine. And the intention of this exercise is to start to disengage with that mental chatter, which is where a lot of the busyness, the stress, the worry, and so on happens, and instead come into our senses. So if you're willing, the first thing we do, and before we start, the beauty of this practice is I'll take you through 3 of our senses: sight, hearing, and touch. But the beauty of this practice is that if you want to switch out one of those senses and bring in one of the others, if that works more easily for you, then please do that. So we start by stopping. So that means putting down our phones if we're in the middle of a tweet or something like that. And I don't think anyone's got a drink in your hands, but if you have, putting that down as well. And setting the intention to be present for each moment as each moment unfolds. And so then we begin by engaging our sense of sight. And so there's no need to go looking around, just casting your gaze forward and silently listing in your head 5 things you can see, either in your direct line of vision or perhaps in your periphery. So it may sound something like glasses, cup, bottle, yellow top, whatever. So noticing 5 things you can see. And then letting go of seeing and connecting now with hearing. And you may find this easier with your eyes closed. So if it feels comfortable to do so, closing your eyes and noticing 5 things that you can hear. And again, listing them silently in your head. So my voice, the aircon, perhaps some shuffling, maybe the sound of your own breathing or the person breathing next to you. And then letting go of hearing and connecting with the sense of touch. And again, this may be easy with your eyes closed. And noticing 5 things that the body is making contact with. Perhaps noticing contact between feet and the floor, or the body making contact with the seat. Perhaps noticing contact of skin with jewelry. And what are your hands touching right now? And when you've noticed 5 things you can see and 5 things you can hear and 5 things that the body's making contact with, tuning in and asking yourself, how am I feeling in this moment? What's going on for me? Maybe there's a sense of feeling calm or spacious or grounded, or maybe there's irritation, boredom, anger, hunger, maybe something else entirely different. And seeing if you can allow this moment to be as it is. So my invitation to you is to try and notice 5 things again at some point in the next 24 hours. My invitation to you is to pause and bring mindful awareness into your lives. It helps us access clarity, creativity, and courage to make better decisions, to solve these important problems. Just think, just imagine what we could achieve and accomplish together if we all harness the power of a pause. Thank you.
Thank you, Farah. I've found that amazingly powerful, and it reminded me about the fact that I'm always rushing somewhere, normally late, which is what my husband likes to tell me, that I'm always running late. And sometimes I don't always stop to really use, the gifts I've been given to think about what's important and what I need to do in that day and in that moment. So hopefully there are some techniques that we've learnt which will enable us to stay engaged with the things that's kind of most important to us as we go through our lives, so not just for today. So I think the speakers have done superbly well. I've got to tell you, they're all volunteers. So they all volunteered to stand up and speak in front of all of you. I don't know about you, it's always harder, I think, to speak in front of colleagues than it is to speak in front of strangers. So I think they've done exceptionally well. And, as you know, we are live. So, as you're all enjoying your drinks and connecting further, we'd like you to continue your social media enterprise. Now, I know some of you aren't on Twitter, so we're quite happy for you to use LinkedIn or Facebook because we're at 92%, which means that we are not quite where I'd like us to be. So we just need more of you to use more social media because we do want to be trending tonight and we still want to be at the top. Feel free to capture your own moments, clearly, and to help us also to capture further moments, because we're going to have a photographer floating around. We're going to have a Vox Pops, so you're going to get to learn something new. And we're also going to have a PwC UK Alumni live Instagram board. I know some of you haven't used them, but it's quite huge amounts of fun, trust me. You will enjoy it, and it's completely painless. So do continue to tweet and share. And you can follow up about the event afterwards on our Alumni Live page. And clearly, if you want to see anything into the future, because we also need to be forward-looking, we actually have a VR experience that you can enjoy upstairs. But we're going to show you a short video of that now.
At PwC, a lot of our clients want our help to try and understand the future a bit better. And traditionally, the way we've done that is by showing them pictures, videos, by talking to them about it. But now we can go one step further than that, by immersing them in that world using the medium of virtual reality. So what happens when someone puts on this headset? In short, they'll be able to explore that future world and experience firsthand the disruptions in it. The fact is that this is actually an incredibly important business tool for us because we can use it to communicate a vision of the future and the disruptions that our clients will experience in that future by using this new medium and using this tool as a storytelling device in the business world. We've also had some unexpected reactions where clients have expressed concern about this future world and how it might impact them, and that has driven richer conversations between us.
Found it really exciting. The whole experience has brought it to life for me in the sense that it's no longer a case of thinking about the future, but putting yourself in the future, interacting in the future and making choices about the future. So it's no longer about if, but what are we going to do when we get to this future position. So all clients are facing disruption and some of them are thinking about it as a threat, but I really think this experience helps you think about disruption as a competitive advantage and how can you propel your business forward.
I think they see opportunities to understand what disruptions will affect their business.
You're seeing disruption play out in real life, and what that means is it suddenly becomes relatable to you.
Beyond this virtual reality experience, we also help clients to understand virtual reality and augmented reality technology, to picture where they can place it and use it in their business, to build the application and also to deploy it in their organization worldwide.
So, some final words from me. Drinks are in the Sunset Bar, which is over here, because I know you're probably wondering where you need to go. And we also have access to, right at the top of the building, which gives us a wonderful view of all of London, actually. But you're not allowed to take glass up there, so we'll have to ask you to put your drinks into a plastic cup if you do really want to go to the top of the building. So a final thought from me. You know, where do you start with change? Well, I learned it's one step at a time. And, you know, do you fail? Nobody ever fails, because failure is just an opportunity to learn. And with that final thought, I'd like to hand over to Andy to close the event.
Thank you, Donna. So I don't know if I'm supposed to fail now. But anyway.
Sorry, I forgot. Don't look.
Magical notes. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you to everyone who's been watching online as well. I am standing now literally between you and the drinks, so I'm going to make this snappy. I really want us to thank the speakers again, so I'm going to ask them all to come back to the stage. So if you would come back, please. Gian, Glenn, Pete, Marlies, Neil, Emma and Farah, thank you all very much. Please take lots of pictures of them and post them on social media.
Look at my camera.
So a little gift for you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. More champagne. Thank you very much. A quick shout out to all of you in the room and online. We are looking for speakers for next year, so if you would like to go through what these people have gone through. We have been working with the speakers for quite a while, working through their talks and doing some coaching and mentoring, and they've been coaching and mentoring us as well on the event. Hopefully it's been a fabulous experience. You can ask them what they really think afterwards. As usual, these events never happen without a fantastic team. And I'm not going to name all of them, and apologies if I don't name you. But there are 4 unbelievably powerful women in particular that I work with. I work with actually a lot of really powerful women. I'm quite lucky with that. But Tamara, Talia, Lucy and Katie, thank you so much. I won't make you come on stage and give you huge flowers, but we are going to do something fabulous. And we'll decide what that is afterwards. Let's see. And finally, please give a massive, massive round of applause to Donna Herdsman. Donna, I think you've kept us on time. And kind of kept all our speakers together. So thank you for that. You're still my best friend. And hopefully we can talk you into something for next year. Anyway, now it's over to you all to connect, do that networking thing, or just catch up with friends. So please make use of the venue. It is amazing on the roof, if you want to go up onto the roof. It is absolutely stunning. It's worth the plastic cup for your alcohol. And those of you that are watching online, you can also connect virtually using social media, obviously, making sure you use the hashtag YourNetworkForLife. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a fantastic rest of your evening.